Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the increased temperatures in our weather. We ask, God, that you'd help us to be able to get outside and enjoy a little bit of it. We pray that you would be with each person here as they make decisions tonight at the City Council meeting. We ask, God, that you'd grant unto them wisdom as they make decisions that determine the future for this community. We ask, God, that you'd help them to have patience in these decisions as well, that they would have all the information they need to make the correct decisions. We ask, God, that you would continue to bless the city staff as they do so many things to the betterment of our community. We pray for your protection of our police department and our firefighters and those that volunteer within our community to serve and protect. We pray, God, that you continue to bless our schools and our educators as they serve to help educate our children and make our communities a better place. We ask, God, that you would continue to bless the churches and the nonprofits as they seek as well to serve those in our community that need help. And we just ask, God, that you would continue to bless them as well. And Father, we ask that you bless our businesses and our local economy. We pray that we would continue to thrive downtown, but also throughout our community. We pray that you'd help us to shop local and do what we can, Lord, to support local. And we just thank you for all that we have in this community. Help us to do what we can to make it better. And we pray this humbly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is 5:30 on April 17th, 2023, and we'll call this meeting the Fergus Falls City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here. We have a quorum. First item of business this evening is approval of the agenda, and I'll call on our city administrator, Andrew Bremseth. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, Your Honor, council members, members of the public. We did get a request to remove item number 6 from the consent agenda for a brief discussion. Other than that, the agenda should be approved as presented.
Thank you. And we can do that through a motion.
I'll make that.
Thank you, Brent.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. We have 3 public hearings this evening. First is a public hearing for construction of the MnDOT State Trunk Highway 210 West project, and we will call on our city engineer, Brian Uvaro, to kick off that discussion. Good evening, Brian.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening, and members. Yes, in the packet, we got representatives from MnDOT here. They're going to talk about, they have a PowerPoint presentation to talk about this Highway 210 project that's on the horizon. And per the attached letter that I've included in the packet, I've also included the legal publication per this letter as well. Like I mentioned, this legal publication was sent to Data Journal and published accordingly. This information is also posted on the city's website, layout of the project, paper copies also in City Hall for interested parties to review. Like I mentioned, project representatives are here. They'll go over a brief PowerPoint presentation. And I just want to note to date, I have received 1 written comment from a resident by the name of Jake Crone. And he would like to express his support for the enhanced bike and pedestrian facilities as proposed in layout 1B that is linked on the city's website. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Lori Vanderheiler from MnDOT.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lori Vanderheider. I am the MnDOT Project Manager for the Trunk Highway 210 Reconstruction Project at the West Junction of I-94. I'm here tonight to request municipal consent, and MnDOT retained SRF Consulting Group to do the design work on this project. Jared Dahl is here with me tonight from SRF. Next slide, please. He will provide an overview of the project. He'll go over the existing conditions, the design alternatives that we have considered, and the alternative that we have selected. Then I will take over again and talk about the city's cost participation and the maintenance responsibilities that will be the city's following construction. And
Thank you, Lori.
I will turn it over to Jared.
Good evening, Jared.
Good evening. Sure.
It's been hit or miss, Lynn.
Is it on?
No.
Takes a second.
Thank you. All right, like Lori said, I'm Jared Dahl with SRF Consulting. We'll talk a little bit about the project, the existing conditions. Currently, Trunk Highway 210 is a 4-lane divided highway from basically County Road 116, where it transitions over to Lincoln Avenue at Western Avenue. Currently, the on-off ramps on the west side of the road are offset. And then some of the on-ramps don't meet current design standards. So the purpose and need of the project, the 2 bridges structures have met their life. They need to be reconstructed. There are currently no pedestrian walkways, trails, sidewalks. I mentioned the ramp realignments are needed. We looked at intersection traffic control, lighting upgrades, and then also connecting where MnDOT left off on their concrete overlay on 210 to continue that to finish that section off. So the pavement condition upgrades. One more slide, please. All right, here's an overview of those. In the green circles, we see the 2 structures that are in need of replacement, also the skewed intersections and the lack of pedestrian access along the corridor. We have side street stops at the off ramps and then signals at Redwood Drive and Western Avenue. So the design alternatives we looked at and brought to the public, next slide. We had alternative A, which was we called the north roundabout option. Alternative B was the north signal option, and then alternative C was the south roundabout option. So alternative A, the north roundabout option, was the one chosen. We've listed out some pros and cons to each, with some of the cons being the loss of trees with the realignment of the on-ramp, eastbound I-94 on-ramp, being the major, and then roundabouts at Redwood, and then the 2 on-off ramps there for I-94. Alternative B was the north signal option. It looks pretty similar to the roundabout option, but we had signals at Redwood, the on-off ramps, and then the existing signal at Western. This one had a few more cons with the alignments, larger embankment quantities by trying to square up the 2 intersections, the skewed intersection coming off on the east side of the interstate presented some challenges there, and then some of the right-of-way impacts. This option would have required right-of-way in that southwest corner. Next option. And then the third alternative was alternative C, the south roundabout option. This also looked at moving everything to the south bridge. This had a little bit, also some cons, with the major one being the I-94 exit ramp on the bottom right corner. It's already a steep grade, and with the pushing everything south, that would only increase that problem. In the comments from truck drivers that it was tough enough to get up there when things got slippery. So our final design alternative, like I said, the public and MnDOT, we went with alternative A, which is the north roundabout. This is how the final design is moving forward. We got a roundabout at Redwood, another one at the west on-off ramps, and then the one at the east, but then tying back into a 4-lane section as we enter Western Avenue. If we go to the next slide. Here's kind of a zoomed-in photo of the Redwood roundabout at Harvest Homes is right there, and the entrance to Walmart there, Mabel Murphy's to the south. Pedestrian access trail on both sides of the road. And then as we get to the roundabout at the west side of the interstate there, like I said, we got pedestrian access for both. We also worked with the community and Ziegler Cat and Harvest Homes to make sure their trucks and semis can get through these roundabouts, as they have some oversized loads. So that's why some of the center islands look a little bit unique. Then as we head to the next roundabout, this is where this one breaks off into, we drop the lane on the north side. That'll be a kind of a free right to get onto interstate there. And then as we come around that roundabout the other way, we add back in that second lane to tie back into Western Avenue. And now Lori will discuss cost participation and maintenance agreement. Thanks.
Thanks, Jared.
So the cost participation, we did a separate layout with different coloring to represent the costs. This is the western half of the project roughly. The blue is the MnDOT cost, that's 100% MnDOT. The yellow is 100% city, so you'll see that at Redwood Lane, the Redwood Lane leg of the roundabout. The green is a split. That's the access to Mabel Murphy's, and that would be 1/3 city and 2/3 MnDOT. Typically, that would be a city cost, but because the contributing traffic is less than 5%, it's less of a cost participation for the city. And then the trails are also shown as 100% MnDOT cost. Next slide, please. This is the eastern half, and there it's predominantly MnDOT cost again. The trail on the south side is shown as 100% city. The city will be credited for sidewalk, the cost of sidewalk, when we do the agreement. So the city had indicated that they would like to go with a trail width there. So next slide. So the current cost estimate for the project is between $16 and $17 million, and we're estimating the city's cost to be between $700,000 and $750,000. That does not include any utility relocations, but at this time we're not anticipating any relocations. We are anticipating some minor adjustments, so like a hydrant adjustment or a manhole adjustment. Also, related to the cost, this project was originally scheduled for fiscal year 2028. In our current draft STIP, we're proposing to construct this in fiscal year it would be construction year 26, with a letting date in, we'd anticipate probably November of 25. That is not approved yet. We expect to get that approved by July of this year. So for budgeting purposes, we'll let you know as soon as we know. And then the other thing related to cost is the city does qualify for aesthetic dollars for the bridge. That would be 5% of the bridge cost, and we've estimated that currently to be about $127,000. And we're working on getting an aesthetics group together and start work on that. Next slide. You can skip to the next one. After the roadway is constructed, there will of course be ongoing maintenance required. MnDOT will take care of the highway. The city will be responsible for maintaining the trail, so snow removal, minor routine repair type things. The roundabouts are a little bit unique with snow removal because you can't just dump the snow in the roundabout. So basically both MnDOT and the city would have to drive around the roundabout to keep things open, but there's no, you would do it on your normal schedule. When you go to do Redwood Lane, you just can't stop at Redwood Lane with the snowbank there. So basically it boils down to the city legs will remain the city's responsibility, and the state highway will remain state highway. Maintenance of lighting, MnDOT will be responsible for the lighting on the ramps, but the maintenance for the lighting at the Redwood roundabout and the eastern leg of any lighting on Lincoln Avenue basically but the roundabout at the western ramps, that would be MnDOT because it's all our roadway. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Questions from the council for Lori before we open up the public hearing? Thank you, Lori. Brian, please.
Your Honor, I just want to note too, on this municipal consent, also per the letter that's included in your packet, we have 90 days to pass a resolution consenting to this, the layout as requested. So I just want to make note of that.
After the public hearing, 90 days after the.
Correct.
Sure, certainly. Thanks, Brian. With that, we're going to open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to State Project 5601-35 MnDOT State Trunk Highway 210 West Project, please step to the lectern. State your name and address for the record. Good evening, Wayne.
Mayor Shire, council members, Wayne Hurley, 501 West Birch Avenue. I am the board chair for Petal Fergus Falls. Just wanted to express our support for the project as presented. One thing I will add, and I'm going to put on where I started to say West Central Initiative, I'll put on my other hat. The trail portions of the project are eligible for transportation alternatives funding. So of the city's cost share, that part could be applied for transportation alternatives funding to help offset that cost. In addition, on my own behalf, I will say that I would love to see a trail as part of that project extended all the way along the south side of Lincoln Avenue past the like Applebee's, the walk-in clinic, and Hunan, Slumberland, in that area to connect up to the rest of the trail that goes in front of the mall, so that we have a little bit more of a complete network into that western edge of town. So otherwise, we'd have a section right by the bridge, and then we'd have a section over on the other side of the mall and kind of a gap in the middle. So all of that would be eligible for transportation alternatives funding. So I'm happy to work with city staff on that and would be supportive of that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Anyone else wishing to speak to this project? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. It's back to the council for discussion and consideration of the resolution approving the final layout for SP 5601. Scott.
I'll offer the resolution, then I have a comment.
Thank you, Scott. Someone like to
I'll
say?
second it and got a comment.
Thanks, Anthony. Go ahead, Scott.
Among the advantages of this plan, I see one of the most that people will appreciate the most is the eastbound 94 on-ramp will give us a little better approach to get on to the traffic ahead of the railroad bridge. There's some other things about this I like, but that one in particular I was really happy to see.
Thank you. Scott? Anthony?
Where would the proposal for the city's share of the funding for this, what bucket would it come out of? Because obviously it's $750,000 today.
Do you want to speak to that?
Brian?
Yes, Your Honor and Councilmember Hicks, we're working on that right now, but a majority of the surface improvements, such as streets associated with MnDOT, would be municipal state aid construction. However, I do want to note too as well, we have this layout right now, but we don't know what the impacts are to our utilities, so those costs are unknown too. But if there are impacts to utilities, the associated utility enterprise fund would be responsible for covering that.
Right. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Other questions for staff or for Lori or Jared? The council? We have a resolution on the floor. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 That resolution is approved. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Brian. Item number 2 is a public hearing for tax increment financing, District 4-16, as requested by FM Bank. And I will call on our Community Development Manager, Clara Beck. Good evening, Clara.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I will just do a quick introduction and then we're going to turn it over to Tom Dunaway, who is here with us on Zoom tonight. This TIF district, Tax Increment Financing District 416, is being requested by FM Bank. The district in question is colloquially referred to as the Shopco site. So they are purchasing that site in order to place a new bank on it. The TIF requested is up to 7 years, a total of $325,826 over the duration of that TIF. Again, it would be for the removal of the current Shopco building to make room for a new building on the site. The materials for the meeting tonight have been made available to the public. We have received at least one written comment that I'm aware of regarding this TIF project in support for the project from the Chamber of Commerce. I believe Lisa is also here tonight and will speak publicly in support of the project. Those are the only comments that have been received thus far. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who's our municipal advisor from Baker Tilly. He did the analysis for this project and can provide some insight into the proposed TIF plan and answer any questions you might have about that. So Tom, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Clara. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Clara, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Tom Denaway. I am with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. We were retained by the city to determine eligibility of the project for the creation of a tax increment financing district. In this case, it would be a redevelopment district, as well as go through the statutory process that would be part of creating said TIF district. As Claire mentioned, the TIF district is proposed to be created to include the development of approximately 17,700 square foot commercial building. It would be a multi-story building with multiple tenants located within it. The main tenant would be, is proposed to be FM Bank, but they also anticipate leasing space to two professional service businesses, as well as potentially a hospitality or retail business. The development's proposed to start construction in 2023 with completion projected either for 23 or 24. The total estimated cost for the development, as provided by the developer, is approximately $9 million. So the proposed TIF district would be a redevelopment tax increment financing district. So there are certain criteria that need to be met in order for the creation of a TIF, of a redevelopment TIF district to be eligible. And those qualifications have to do with the existing condition of the property and the buildings that are located within the proposed boundaries of the TIF district. In order for a redevelopment TIF district to be eligible to be created, the first test has to be that parcels comprising at least 70% of the area of the district have to be occupied by buildings, streets, utilities, or other improvements. The legislature does not want us to be able to pull a bunch of greenfield, undeveloped state sites into a redevelopment TIF district and consider it to be blighted. They want there to be a direct nexus between improvements on the site and the use of a redevelopment TIF district or the creation of a district. The other finding that needs to be made as part of that is that more than 50% of the buildings that are located within the TIF district have to be determined to be structurally substandard. So that was an analysis that was previously done on behalf of the city by LHB Engineering, and the executive summary of that report was contained within the tax increment plan that's in front of you tonight. And they did make the finding that the project is eligible for the creation of a tax increment district or a redevelopment TIF district. Unlike other types of TIF districts, such as housing and economic development, where the eligibility for those districts is based on the end use of the project, redevelopment TIF districts have to do with the existing condition of the property in its current state. The end use of the property could be of any variety of uses. It does not have to be a specific type of development. It really has to do with the existing condition of the property in its current state that determines the eligibility of the TIF district. Redevelopment TIF districts are used to remove financial barriers and physical barriers to reinvestment or redevelopment of the site. As such, one of the requirements of statute when it comes to the use of TIF within a redevelopment district is what's referred to as the 90% test. In the case of a redevelopment district, at least 90% of the tax increment revenue that's generated by the district has to be used to finance or reimburse for costs associated with correcting the conditions that allowed the designation of a redevelopment district in the first place. These costs are included but not limited to acquiring properties containing structurally substandard buildings, or improvements or hazardous substances, pollution or contaminants, acquiring adjacent parcels necessary to make a site of sufficient size, demolition and rehabilitation of structures, clearing of land, removal of hazardous substances, or remediation necessary to develop the land. In addition, the installation of utilities, roads, sidewalks, and parking facilities related to the development are also eligible. So the goal of this piece of statute is to have a direct linkage between the use of tax increment and removing those blighting conditions that allow that site to be considered redevelopment TIF district eligible in the first place. Again, the statute's trying to draw a direct nexus between the cause and need of the use of TIF, as well as what the TIF dollars are being used to reimburse for. So with redevelopment TIF districts, they have an eligibility to be in place for a period of up to a total of 26 years. However, for the purpose of this project, the district is proposed to be created with a duration of only 7 years. The amount of assistance that's being sought for this project and the amount of costs that are being reimbursed would only take approximately a period of 7 years to achieve, based on the assumptions that are listed below under the TIF revenue projections if you work through the memo that we prepared. So when we size the TIF district and we project the future tax increment revenues, it's based off the incremental increase in market value generated by the new development. So if the TIF district is created, the existing value that is in place on the property will be frozen, and all the taxes applicable to that value will continue to flow to each of the taxing jurisdictions at their current rate. It's the incremental increase in value above that and the taxes applicable to that would be captured by the TIF district and redirected for the period necessary to reimburse the TIF eligible expenses. Once those TIF eligible expenses have been reimbursed, the district is decertified and that new property tax value comes online and becomes part of the general tax base. The post-development market value for this project was provided by Otter Tail County and totals $2.995 million. And the existing base market value of the property is $990,000 based on the assessed 23, or the assessed 22 for pay 23 property tax amount. If the TIF district was created now, that would be the base value of the district, and that would actually keep the value a little bit higher than the proposed pay 2024 values are. Some of the parcels within the TIF district have proposed market value decrease next year based on the current county valuation of the site. So if the district were to be created now, it would maintain that slightly higher base value than if it were to be created at a later date. And that would be to the benefit of each of the taxing jurisdictions because it would maintain that value in the frozen base value portion of the TIF revenue of the TIF district, and that revenue would flow to each of the taxing jurisdictions. So in preparing the TIF revenues, we assumed the project was 100% completed in 24, assessed in 25 for taxes payable, with the first TIF revenue being generated in 2026. We assumed a 2% market value inflation assumption, and we assumed the TIF revenue projections were based off the final pay 22 tax rates of 107.288. Excuse me, that should be the final pay 23 tax rate of 107.288%. We've also assumed that the city would retain up to 10% of the TIF revenue for administrative purposes. That is a maximum amount allowed for by TIF statute, is that the city can retain up to 10% of the revenues to fund costs directly associated with the administration of the district. Those costs have to be documented and records have to be kept for documenting what those costs were incurred for. They include things such as the annual TIF reporting that has to be done, any additional auditing or staff time that is associated with the district. Those costs can be reimbursed and paid for from that 10% city retainage. If that revenue is not needed for that, it can also be used to pay down the outstanding obligation of the district early. So as proposed, it would take approximately 7 years for the TIF district to reimburse the obligation. If the value comes in higher post-development or inflation happens at a greater rate than proposed, that overall term could be shorter than the 7 years that's proposed here. At no point would it be longer if this is the only obligation of the district. The future pay-as-you-go contract that the city would enter into would have a stipulation that the maximum duration for the reimbursement of this pay-go obligation would be 7 years. So as proposed, all that information results in a first-year TIF amount of approximately $42,572. So the property that is located within the TIF district will be fully assessed their total property tax amount, and they would pay that total property tax amount just as any other property within the city. The portion of the incremental increase in taxes that are paid on that site, specifically the ones that are TIF eligible to be captured, are what captured and redirected by the county and paid to the city as the tax increment revenue. The total property tax bill on the property is typically greater than the amount of TIF revenue that is generated, both due to the base value of the property as well as the state property tax that is required of commercial property. That state property tax is not eligible to be captured as TIF revenue. So not all of the revenue that is paid annually as property tax will be reimbursed back as TIF revenue. Only a portion of that is, because not all of that tax bill would be eligible. So the annual TIF amount prior to inflation starts at $42,572, and as proposed, we have a 7-year duration for the district, which would bring the total projected TIF revenue for the district up to $325,826. That revenue would be used in the following ways. As mentioned, the proposed project is proposed to be done on a pay-as-you-go basis, with the developer seeking reimbursement for their anticipated cost of demolition of the existing building in an amount up to $286,000. So this developer would be responsible for incurring that cost up front, and then provided they've incurred that cost up front and provided documentation of that amount, or a lesser amount, the city would reimburse them for up to the $286,000 with TIF on an annual basis to the extent that the TIF revenue is generated. If the cost was less, the cost of demolition was less than $286,000, the actual cost would be what would be reimbursed. If the cost of demolition was greater than the $286,000, the developer would only be eligible to be reimbursed for the $286,000 that is within the TIF budget. So if the cost is less, the reimbursement amount is less. If the cost of demolition is more, the reimbursement amount would not change. So the TIF is proposed to be done on a pay-as-you-go basis. So the developer first incurs those costs, and to the extent that TIF revenue is capable of fully reimbursing that, it's paid to the developer at 90% of the revenue that's captured each year. If TIF comes in at a lower rate, or if tax rates are lower, or if the post-development market value is lower, and that amount is not fully repaid or reimbursed after the end of the 7 years, the city would have no obligation to make the developer whole or to fully reimburse that amount. The benefit of doing this on a pay-as-you-go basis is the developer takes on the risk that the future TIF revenue is going to come in as projected. The city would have no further obligation beyond making their TIF reimbursement payment based on the revenue that was generated each year. So using that, we prepared the following TIF eligible budget as identified within the TIF plan. The main reimbursement will be the developer on a pay-as-you-go basis, the reimbursement of the demolition cost of $286,000. The city would also be eligible to retain up to $32,581 for administrative purposes. And then just to have a full year of TIF revenue in that 7th year, there's a slight amount of $7,245 that would be left over. That was not needed for that demolition reimbursement, that would be eligible for other city purposes that would also be TIF eligible, or that revenue could be returned back as excess tax increment and redistributed to each of the taxing jurisdictions at the completion of the district. So the total TIF eligible budget for the district is $325,826. Typically, when we do a pay-as-you-go TIF note, there is an interest component. The developer is incurring that cost up front, and they're being reimbursed over time. Because of that, most TIF pay-as-you-go notes include a developer interest carry reimbursement. In the case of this development, there is no interest being accrued on the outstanding reimbursement amount of the $286,000. So that lessens the overall cost of the TIF district, and it keeps the overall term of the district as short as possible and as short as necessary to refund that $286,000 amount. So the developer will only be eligible to receive TIF assistance upon the completion of the demolition of the existing blighted structure and the completion of the new development. If that demolition does not occur, they would not be eligible to receive any tax increment, and the TIF district could be decertified at that point or collapsed and placed back in the general property tax rule. So as mentioned, redevelopment TIF districts are put in place to help remove financial and physical barriers to reinvestment on a site. When we think about the redevelopment of a blighted site, we are dealing with property that has barriers to investment that would not be present or found on an otherwise greenfield site. Such costs like that include demolition of an existing building. That is the thing that would prevent development on this site that would not be present on a greenfield site. So part of the goal of the use of redevelopment tax increment is to help level the playing field between a site such as this that has financial barriers to redevelopment of it. The goal of TIF is to level that playing field between the cost of developing this site and the cost of developing a greenfield site, with the goal to be to remove those barriers and keep this site to be eligible to be redeveloped and not to continue to fall farther behind other greenfield sites. Commercial property and commercial development tends to follow the market and go to the site of the cheapest and most affordable development. If a site has barriers to investment, like barriers to redevelopment, like this site does, the market's likely to pass it by. So that's the goal and the idea behind the creation of a redevelopment TIF district, is to utilize TIF to remove those barriers to investment on the site. Another type of cost that can help represent a barrier such as that, or illustrate that type of barrier, is the cost of acquiring a site with a structurally substandard building. The building still does have a value to it. It's necessary to purchase the building at that value, even though it does not have ultimate use by the end user or acquisition or acquirer of the property. So there's an increased cost to acquiring the site because you're ultimately buying a building that's going to be demolished and not utilized, even though that building does have some economic value. That economic value of the building represents another financial and physical barrier to redevelopment of the site. In the case of this property, the county has assigned a market value to the existing building of $674,500. You could extrapolate that the developer had to pay an additional amount of money to acquire the site of approximately $674,000 due to that existing building, and that's an expense for which they would have no economic use because that building would be demolished. So that is another type of financial barrier that could prevent redevelopment on the site. In the case of this project, the developer is not seeking reimbursement for that cost, but it would be TIF eligible under the 90% test as identified above. The only thing that the developer is seeking TIF reimbursement for is the cost of the demolition of $286,000. So as such, given the magnitude of the cost and the financial barriers to redevelopment of the site, being the demolition as well as the cost of the value of the building that is being purchased, the combined cost of both of those are approximately $960,500 that would not be presumed to be present on an otherwise greenfield site of equal size and equal development opportunity. Those represent a financial and physical barrier to redevelopment of the site, and therefore we conclude that but for the use of tax increment, given the barriers to development of the site, as just mentioned, that the project would be unlikely to occur but for the TIF assistance. And then the final piece included within the memo and within the TIF district is there are the two city-owned adjacent parcels to the west of the development. Those parcels have been included within the boundary of the TIF district. We did that to include maximum flexibility as it relates to the development of those sites in the future. Including those parcels within the boundary of the TIF district does not create any new or less TIF revenue for the district, and it does not obligate the city to use any tax increment revenue related to the development of those sites in the future. It just maintains that eligibility. There's a 5-year period based off of what's known as the 5-year rule within TIF districts where all the obligations, or 75% of the obligations of a district, have to be entered into within that first 5 years. So the city would have a period of 5 years within which they could create and add additional obligations of the district related to the development or redevelopment of those city-owned sites, so that eligibility is maintained by including them within the boundaries of the TIF district now. The city council would have complete authority and autonomy as it relates to expanding the budget of the TIF district at such time that development on those sites came forward. This whole process, statutory process, would be gone through at that time as well, with the full public hearing process and the like. So nothing is being created as a result of, or related to those two properties as it relates to the inclusion of them within the district, but including them within the district does just maintain flexibility for the future within that 5-year rule. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions for Tom before we open up for the public hearing? Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. We'll do that at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to the tax increment financing District 4-16 as requested by FM Bank, please step forward to the lectern and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dwayne Cookman. I live down 543 West Stanton, Fergus Falls, Minnesota. I'm a simple person. I thought the tax increment financing was to bring in new revenue. Am I mistaken in that? New
develop. It's
developers.
it's for development purposes.
Okay, but this is internal, right? So you're just moving a building, FM Bank, what already is here, right?
They
Wants to
currently
go to a different place. Is this the first time that that's happened in Fergus Falls? Are we opening up a door for other people to do the same thing? Perhaps like Spees wants to make a different place. Is this the first time this has been done?
Trying to think off the top of my head what through our other list of districts, if any of them were a move.
We said Wells Fargo was new, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think back then it was Norwest, and I have a feeling that the TIF rules have changed since then. Laura, you might have something comment on that.
That's my only question. I rest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Just kidding. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council and Fergus Falls community. I'm Lisa Workman. I'm president of the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, 202 South Court Street, and I'm here to share that the Fergus Falls Chamber supports tax increment financing. Tax increment financing, TIF, is an economic development tool that should be used by a municipality to incentivize developers by capturing the increased property taxes to fund expenses such as land acquisition, demolition or renovation, infrastructure improvements, and more. The use of TIF requires the developer to complete a lengthy application, pay the independent consultant fee, and follow through a process that's a thorough process. The use of TIF is guided by state statute and must pass the but-for test. But for this incentive, the project would not happen. Most often, when TIF is approved, the developer pays all upfront development costs, land purchase, renovation, demo, etc., and does not receive any payment from the taxing authority, but rather a reimbursement of the increased portion of the tax. The taxing authority, in this case the city, will continue to collect the original taxes. In essence, they're not losing any tax revenue, but instead will see an increased tax base and an increase in tax revenue later and into the future. And so on behalf of the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, we would like to share that whereas tax increment financing is a valuable economic development tool that has been successfully used to revitalize blighted areas, promote job growth, and attract new businesses, and whereas TIF allows governments to use future property tax revenues generated by new development within a designated district to finance public and private improvements and other economic development initiatives. And whereas TIF encourages private investment in areas that would otherwise be economically unfeasible or unattractive, can help spur economic growth and improve the quality of life for everyone in Fergus Falls. Be it resolved that at the March 22nd, 2023 Chamber of Commerce Board meeting, the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors voted to show support for the use of tax increment financing, TIF, as a valuable economic development tool, and we encourage its responsible use to promote economic growth and improve the quality of life for residents. Furthermore, we encourage the use of other available economic development tools to grow our business community for the benefit of residents, businesses, and visitors. In advance of this meeting, we shared it with all of our membership, in addition to having a letter of support published in the Daily Journal, and the feedback that we have received from the business community has been all positive. They support the use of TIF whenever possible, as well as every other economic development tools to make Fergus Falls a great place to do business. Thank you.
I have a question for.
Thank you, Lisa.
May I ask a question?
Sure, we're going to take public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to take public comment, then we'll bring it back to the
Sounds good.
council after that. So anyone else from the public wish to speak to the issue?
Lori Mullen, 2840 Lakewood Drive. So we're looking at a redevelopment district, and as the gentleman from Baker Tilly said, we have to look at this district in the light of 26 years. You guys were all provided an OSA training, and I hope you took the time to go through that, but the OSA would indicate that the question that would have to be asked, is it likely that this property would be developed in the 26-year time frame? And it would. The river is the Gold Coast in Fergus Falls. There's no doubt in my mind. It was a jaw-dropping request of $325 from FM Bank to ask the taxpayers to cover that cost. First of all, FDIC has to approve all banking builds prior to the request for TIF. The call report indicates that FM Bank made $5 million in profits last year. We have other banks in Fergus that have recently been built: US Bank, Gate City, Bell Bank, the one in front of Fleet Farm. None of them came to the city and asked for TIF. They never asked for help. I suggest that if FM Bank needs the assistance, that they apply like any other retail business for the BDA loan at the 4% interest. Baker Tilly said that there was an inspection done. I asked for that inspection report. The report is 3 years old, and it was done prior to any updates at the Shopko building for the academy to go in there. So in light of that, I called the building in zoning and asked for what permits were provided, and I've toured the building myself, and I would say that there's well in excess of $300,000 that has been done in improvements in that building, so it's not blighted. So with the numbers that Tom provided, actually, I come up with something less than 15%. He's using old information that River Edge actually paid for. There were so many things on this front that, you know, I wasn't even sure where to start. I agree with Lisa, yes. TIF it's not good or bad, but sometimes it's an ethical question. This city council can decide that it's legal in their eyes. Does it pass a smell test? No, it's not. It's not blighted. It's not new business. It's not creating jobs. This city council just had a retreat, and we need all the tax dollars we can collect. Our streets are falling apart. Scott Rachels at one of the city council meetings mentioned that our taxes would have to go up 25% to cover what was needed in road repair. We have the treatment center that needs work. Technology at City Hall here is a disaster.
So we're
I
going
said-
to keep.
I'm- no, I'm-
Sure, we're going to keep
Yep.
the public hearing here to the tax increment.
I sat
financing
in on the
proposal for
strategic plan for the
16-4.
city in November 22, and the discussion was on TIF. For a brief moment for the Economic Development Committee, and there was a couple city council people sitting there. And our talk was that it was meant for job creation. It wasn't going to be for retail. They didn't have much appetite for the housing, quite honestly, with some of the rebates. So I guess I, from the public, do not want to see those dollars go for TIF.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you for being here. Others?
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the council. Natalia Bowman, Greater Fergus Falls, 101 West Lincoln Avenue, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As the economic development organization that serves Fergus Falls, our role in requests such as this are to provide education and assistance to applicants throughout the process. By way of technical assistance and guidance, we strive to establish fact-based analysis to ensure that public financing tools, such as redevelopment TIF, will result in public benefits that preserve and expand our tax base. We provide free and confidential assistance to any business that seeks it or that should require it. So statute for redevelopment TIF, and there is a difference, and there are several different types of TIF districts. Economic development TIF is new business, there's housing TIF. Redevelopment TIF requires that the project must provide benefit to the city and its residents. Criteria include job creation, job retention, training, land cleanup, tax base expansion, removal of blight, or redevelopment. Based on statute, this particular project meets at least 4 criteria that serve public benefit. Fundamentally, these types of incentives drive development and remove financial and physical barriers that typically prevent the private market really from developing or redeveloping a site. In this case, TIF provides support to redevelop a high-profile property that anchors our downtown. The $9 million in private investment to redevelop the Shopko site not only removes that blight, it redevelops a prime location and contributes directly to our downtown and riverfront revitalization efforts that have been ongoing for years. It will also result in the construction of a nearly 18,000 square foot commercial building that, yes, would house one financial institution as well as 2 to 3 additional businesses, including professional services and food service, which allows those business entities to retain critical workforce and attract additional talent as growth continues. The development, as Tom already laid out, will certainly expand the tax base, approximately 142% increase that may not otherwise occur. Those 4 public purpose benefits alone that I previously mentioned meet statutory requirements guided by the state, but as a value-added bonus, we've been working with another developer that has a project in mind. So if TIF were to be created, if they were able to demo and build new on that site, this could spur subsequent development that would result in a smaller scale mixed use project, including speculative commercial space for new and expanding retail, recreation, as well as housing. Without TIF, the scope of this particular redevelopment opportunity, as well as future opportunities, would likely change. This redevelopment project also provides an opportunity for local businesses to invest and continue contributing to the ongoing revitalization efforts. As an economic development organization, we are grateful to FM Bank as well as the other interested business owners, investors, and developers for their interest in investing in Fergus Falls, and we appreciate your time and consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Others wishing to speak before we bring it back to council? Good evening again, Wayne.
Mayor and City Council members, Wayne Hurley, 501 West Birch Avenue. I wasn't planning to speak on this tonight, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to say I'm not in favor of or opposed to the TIF designation, but what I would like you to consider is the fact that in the downtown riverfront plan that was adopted by the council, it does show river access along the river on that side. So something to maybe consider along with the TIF. Those of you that have been on the council for a while may remember the West Side Drive apartment project where we got that trail connection in there using a similar financing method. So just something that I'd request that you consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Jasmine Sunmore, resident of no, I don't even know. Oakview Heights Drive. I just moved. I own Aura Fabricators. We were a lucky recipient of TIF about 7 years ago. And I can say from my own experience that it is a essential tool when it comes to overcoming the barriers and signing your life away for what you have to do in order to get projects done and jumpstart economic development. When I look at this project, while it seems a little not normal, I guess, when it comes to TIF considerations, it is a huge tool in jumpstarting the development of that downtown riverfront area. And I can see the snowball effect that will likely have, and that is why, as a recipient, past recipient of TIF dollars, business owner in Fergus Falls and a resident of Fergus Falls, I am in favor of this resolution. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening, Lee.
Good evening, council people. I'm Lee Rogness. I live at 212 Anna Court on the west side of Fergus Falls in the residential area, of course. And it's a privilege to speak tonight regarding a TIF. I'm particularly interested in economic growth. I'm particularly interested in growing the tax base of our community and of our county as well. We have a number of opportunities to increase that because there's always those that are falling off the tax roster, businesses that are changing, and there's things that are always changing there. So we always have to be prudent to bring new businesses and new opportunities for tax forward. And this is one of those examples. We probably will not experience it tomorrow. In other words, we don't want to look to use those dollars right now, but we do know that when they come on a tax roll, they will come at a greater number in volume, and it may not be something that this commission, board of council people will see, but it will be for the next ones, and it'll be good for our community in the long run. We heard tonight from Tom. I thought Tom just did an exceptional job. Tom, you did a great job. Man, I'm not about to go where he's been. And I'll also be clear to not try to be redundant on the speakers that have already spoke for it tonight. Lisa and Natalia did a great job of laying out the opportunities that lay before us. But I would just, if you mind me going back just a little bit, when I served on the Port Authority, the city of Fergus Falls came to the Port Authority and says, the east end of Lincoln Avenue just before Concord Bridge. I don't even know if people know where Concord Bridge is anymore, but it was there then. And it's the bridge that goes, the river flows under. There was an area of our city that was definitely in a blight condition. And they was wondering how we could together bring that area of the community into good use and bring an anchor to that end of the community. And thus the work went forward. And really what happened there is that there was a number of businesses on a very short street that went north and south to the river and dead-ended at the river. And there were small businesses on each side of that road, various shops. Through the efforts of the joint efforts that is, that demolition took place in that area, and the businesses were relocated, or they closed, or they retired. Any number of opportunities became of the business owners, and a humongous number of rodents had to find new housing. And there was different conditions then, and it was serious, and that was taken care of. Did we get a good anchor in that end of town? It's probably questionable, because the best anchor that came forward was a business that was on the edge of the community that wanted to move more into the center lines of the city, and particularly on Lake Lincoln, which was a main street. That business sold its business to yet another chain business, and we found ourselves with what we refer to as the most recent business, that the corporate company filed bankruptcy, and consequently the store closed, even though the store may have been doing a good business, which we do not particularly have all the details on. But nevertheless, we know that a lot of maintenance was deferred on that building. And that's why that building is in the condition it is today. And what we really need in that end of the town is a very viable business, a business that has the wherewith to keep their properties up, a business that is able to grow the opportunities for other businesses to join them and share space, share parking lot, and share opportunity. Also, we understand that that property has additional excess space. Well, that, under this whole program, will have the opportunity to come in under that umbrella, if you will, and prosper as well, whatever that business would be. And we need to understand that this property was obtained from a developer that tried to put a project together in there, and due to the economics found it was unable to do that. So what we're finding is an applicant that wants to put a business in there and do great things. Now, I did promise I wouldn't reiterate so much, and I'm going to go through my notes and try and eliminate some of the things that have already been well said and said better than I can. And again, I'll go back and reference to the comments that Tom made regarding this. During the election period, we talked and heard much about things of economic development and economic growth in our community. And I thought that was absolutely refreshing to hear, because this is exactly how a community needs to grow, how it prospers, and how it brings benefit to the residents of the community, along with jobs and other opportunities. And I think we have an applicant that's in that category. It might not be the retail, and maybe thus, because it's not a retail, it brings another dynamic to us. Of the 26 years that are available to the applicant, they're only asking for 7. And if you take the amount of dollars that they're requesting for the removal of this building and divide it over those 7 years, you're $40,000 plus. $40,000 commitment on an annual basis is really a small investment for a tremendous return on opportunity. Also, this opportunity does not require any financing by the city. That means you will not have to borrow money. That means you do not have to bond for it. And the financing is already created within the process itself. And this will grow as well for us in the future. Now, some of those opportunities that we've already talked about and heard about is that we will get a new look in that end of town. It'll leave room for other development. They are going to put the applicant is going to build a building somewhere under $10 million. And in this economic time, that might be a scary number. It might be more than that, but nevertheless, they're quoting $8 to $9 million. That's all taxable, and that'll be on the increase. The property taxes will increase 100-fold plus. We will retain 20 to 25 jobs, and we'll give them jobs, new opportunities. They'll retire a space that will also give opportunity for other professional businesses to move into and include more and new employees as well. And I think the nature of a bank and the applicant that we have for us will draw traffic to the east end of our town. And again, that's the investment that we will make as a community on a 1 year at a time basis is certainly worthy of consideration. Having said all that, I think we really need to probably dig deeper or climb the tree higher. And that is, the city has already invested and talked to and pursued TIF districts in Fergus Falls. The statute is already in place. The statute has been approved, and it's available to anybody in this public community to make application on. So the work is already done on this. The taxpayers have already paid their taxes. The city has used its revenue to put this tax district and tax plan in place. So we're in a procedural place. The application has been vetted by Baker Tilly, and I can be reassured that I know those folks real well. They do an excellent job of vetting these applications. So I think the application is ready for the approval. And the application to vote on this is not about whether or not they're worthy. It's not about the applicant's ability or the type of business they have. Zoning takes care of the nature of the business. And it's not about our preferences. It's not about alternative interests. It's not about anything other than the fact this is a business just like any other business. They have the same opportunities to make application. And this is an application about eligibility. And if we're going to start choosing and picking who gets these benefits, I would dare venture that we're getting on some pretty slippery grounds. Because if we say no to somebody, what would have been the criteria for the yes? And so that's a consideration. And I would just suggest that we don't want to kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs for us, because what we will invest today will come back and give us much more in the future. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone else wishing from the public to speak?
Hello. My name is Tasha Rolfs. I'm a resident of Fergus Falls. I'm the founder of Otter Cove Children's Museum. And I've had a few amazing encounters with FM Bank all around philanthropy. And as someone who has backed numerous projects in this town, I have watched over and over and over again as FM Bank has supported every single huge project that has been done in this community. Otter Cove, the Magnuson Park, the ice arenas, just to name a few. They are backing so many amazing, amazing projects in our city, and they are supporting us. And they have jumped through all of the hoops, and we have finance experts and economic experts telling us that this is the right thing to do. And I think it's our time to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. Anyone else wishing to speak? Thank you all. We will close the public hearing is back to the council for consideration. We'd like to get a resolution on the floor before we have comments. Would anyone like to offer a resolution approving tax increment financing District 4-16?
I will offer that resolution, Your Honor.
Thank you. Jim?
I'll second.
Second from Tom. Thank you, Tom. Discussion. Al, did you have a?
Yes, I do.
Please.
I would like to respond to each one of those people who stood up and spoke. Lisa, from the chamber. I'm looking here at what's called the City of Fergus Falls Business Subsidy Policy, amended May 3rd, 2019. I'm looking at number 2, letter A. It says here, but for test. Substantial likelihood that the project would not go forward without the business subsidy requested. Now, this is some new numbers that I don't think Lori had earlier when she spoke. I just received this today. Last year, in 2020, after the revised numbers came out, FM Bank with the domicile bank in Granite Falls took in $7,152,000 of net income. Their total capital, when I first quoted it at a couple months ago in 2020, because I didn't have all the numbers, is now $26 million, over 26, $26.016 million. Also, too, with the chamber and Otter Cove, that's great that they give. But I see there that you're recipients of that money, too. So that's why I see a little bit of a, I can see you can support it because you received money on it. Mr. Rognus, a couple things with you. Who actually owns the property at Shopko?
So you can speak, but we're not going to engage in a
No, I just want to.
I'm just going to make a statement here. A public hearing is an opportunity for the public to address the council. We're
Right.
not going to engage them back.
Okay.
If you want to make statements, feel free to do so, but we are not going to engage the public
Not a
during the
problem.
public hearing.
I can do that. So, with that being said, also too, back in January 11th at our council meeting, it was in our packet that had listed the projects that FM Bank was a philanthropic supporter. That's true, as many are in this town. There was just a check given over to the city for $1 million to some loan programs here to the city of Fergus Falls through Gate City Bank. Also, too, it talks about here that FM Bank had donated $250,000 to Lake Region Healthcare, $30,000 to the Fergus Falls Area College Foundation, scholarships and Greater Fergus Falls to support continued economic development growth, as well as multiple other nonprofits like Otter Cove and Children's Museum. Dr. Alan Magnuson Park. I would say if they need $325,000, maybe they should keep it first so they can proceed with what they want to do. That's where I'm at,
Thanks,
Mayor.
Al.
I'm not done, Mayor. I'm not done at all. What I find it very, very difficult and frustrating when somebody of a financial institution is trying to get taxpayer money to continue that, and they're making that kind of money. I have an issue with that, and I think the taxpayers do too. I'm done at this point.
Thank you. Al, other comments from the council?
I go.
Anthony, please.
Obviously, when this first came up, I voted against it, and we'll do that again this evening. I don't think it's a question of kind of TIF being a useful tool, but I do think that the but-for test in this instance is not necessarily applicable, because I think the project will go ahead with or without the TIF financing. Before FM Bank can go ahead with such a project, they have to get approval from the feds well, if you did that, then you had the intent of building. So therefore, I think that intent is the key. We've gone from this being a project of a 3.5-year TIF now to 7 years TIF. So it's doubled, in terms of what it's going to cost the taxpayer. Shopco is currently being occupied, and there is obviously, a business operating in there. And as I think somebody alluded to already, I think in the last few years we've had 5 new banks built. So clearly, other banking financial institutions see the benefit of moving to Fergus without seeking taxpayer help in which to do it. I think, we haven't even seen exactly what they're going to build. Everybody talks about this palace that they're going to build, that it's going to occupy this, it's going to cost $9 million, it's going to create jobs. We haven't physically seen it, but we're being asked to give them, $325,000 over the course of 7 years. The reality is, we need every dime that we can get to fix the roads. And I don't think it's not about, philanthropy. There's a lot of other businesses also give a lot of money in Fergus to a lot of other causes. Just take even down, what happened downtown. So I think pulling that card is a little bit trashy to say just because I give money to the city of Fergus Falls, charitable organizations, thus I therefore can ask the city to kind of basically reimburse me for that. I think that's, quite honestly, I think morally that kind of, makes me wonder about FM Bank that they would do something like that. So I think, I can't support this just because of where it is. And I think it is a beautiful site, and I think, there'll be something better built on it than a bank. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I'm just going to make a couple points as I see them. First of all, I have not heard FM Bank make the claim that we owe them money because they have given to the community. I think there's people within the community who are very grateful for the support that FM Bank has given over the years, and they want to support a project at FM Bank. So just for the record, I want to make sure that I have not heard FM Bank. I think you indicated that would be some morally.
I've had a meeting with FM Bank.
So I haven't. I've had multiple meetings with them too, and certainly did not indicate in any way that we owe them anything because they contribute to the community. Second thing I just want to make a point is that FM Bank, as I understand, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, could do this project without the TIF financing and have the building. That the $286,000 is the cost to remove the existing building on the site, which will lead to further development and more business in our community. So I just want to make that point. Like, I think that FM Bank could do the project. It would leave. So we're removing a blighted building and allowing for potential redevelopment and additional development and additional tax dollars on that site through this TIF arrangement. So with that,
Mayor Ben, may I speak?
Yes, Al.
It says it clearly in our packet, January 11th, 2023. It lists all those numbers in here. It was in our packet at a council meeting where it shows that money that was given out. And, that shouldn't, in my opinion, that shouldn't even be listed in there. Everybody gives money. They're not, if it's listed, it seems like there's a reason for it. And I don't know why there should be. Also, I would like to speak on, too, the business that did come in to town was not located in Fergus, which received TIF. The person who spoke earlier, that had came into town, it was located in another city, so I agree with that. TIF is great for that. Brought in a business. But, when you're relocating a business one block in town, and if you talk to any realtor, location, location, location. That's a prime area. And I think it could be utilized by something different other than a bank, that we have a number of them in town, and that's another one of the criterias. It's not a complete essential business when you look at that criteria from the City of Fergus Falls business subsidy policy. Because in the long run, a bank can be absorbed by all the other banks in town if that happened. So there's another criteria thing that doesn't quite match for me.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, Jim?
I have one question, and that I keep hearing all the time, about all the other banks that have moved into town. My question is, how many of those other banks would have been eligible for TIF?
May I speak on that?
I don't know that any of them would, because they didn't tear down any buildings.
Yes, they did. Bell Bank did. They tore down Thumb Linen.
Well, shame on them for not asking for it.
Well, they didn't.
So hang on, we're not gonna get out disorderly. If you want to talk, please, let's just keep order. So, thank you, Jim. Laura, you had a question, please?
So, Mr. Mayor, you had just commented that, this is more than likely, they can still go through with this without receiving TIF. So, through all of the training that I have went through, they specifically state that that is the worst-case scenario. That we provide TIF for a project that would more than likely go through without receiving TIF. And that goes back several years, and that was with OSA. I do have a question. On page 5, it says factual basis. The City Planning Commission has determined that the development proposed to the TIF plan conforms to the City Comprehensive Plan. When did this come before the City Planning Commission?
Claire, do you?
Yeah, so in this case, what that section is referring to, since the city does not have a comprehensive plan, it would be referring to our zoning code. And in this case, a bank is an applicable use in I believe it's B3 zone.
That was my next question.
And if I could jump in as well, that should say that the city council has found that. That was an error. So one of the resolution that's in front of you tonight would be making that finding that the proposed development conforms to the city's plan for development.
Could we make that change, please?
Absolutely.
Anything else?
No.
Thank you, Laura. I just want to clarify my statement. What I said was that, and maybe I wasn't clear, so I'll say it again. That square footage could go on that site without the TIF that would go to remove the Shopko site. Now, that to me is the worst case scenario. That to me is a building going on a site that's leaving a blighted building and not allowing for future development and the redevelopment of the entire site as it fits in with the downtown riverfront plan that we've spent a lot of money and a lot of private investment has done too. So just to be clear, I'm not saying that they would go ahead and do this. I'm saying they could go ahead and do this without taking down the blighted building, which would allow for more development on the site and increase taxes to the city. So that's just my perspective. But there's a lot of perspectives on this issue, obviously. So we're going to call for a vote here.
Mr. Mayor, I want to make a comment, please.
Please do, and then we're going to call for a vote.
We will, okay. I've got two items here I'd like to read. As Anthony had mentioned, ethically and morally, we need to get back to the basics. We have to look out for the taxpayer. We have to look out where the money's going. This screenshot of a text I have received, and this was Tuesday, February 21st at 6:17 p.m., which I believe our council meeting ended at about 6 that night. It says here, Allah, I need to talk to you about our new councilwoman voting against the bank. This is by John Bloom from FM Bank. She replies, no idea. I certainly can connect her with you so you can discuss your concerns. Please let me know if you want me to make that introduction. I think at that time he realized that was probably not a good thing to do. He says, yes, please. I also voted no that night. So did Anthony Hicks. Councilman Hicks voted no on that night. I wasn't called. I know Anthony wasn't called, nor was our employers. I find that very unusual why somebody would do that to the only councilwoman that we have. I find that disturbing. Number two, I also have what came off, you can find it very easily on the internet. It's called B&R Transport, LLC. The business is active. It was started July 10th, 2015. The agent name is John L. Bloom. Directors, officers, John Bloom, manager, John Bloom agent, John Bloom organizer, Scott Rachel's agent. So I find there's a complete conflict of interest with Councilman Rachel's voting tonight on this because there's a financial interest with another business. This is serious stuff, people. We need to get back to integrity and transparency. If anybody would like these, I do have them. Or if anybody wants to inspect them or proceed looking at them. I'm done.
Thanks, Al. Did you want to make any comments?
Sure. Conflict of interest rules, our state rules and our city code basically look to the individual if they have a direct or indirect financial benefit from the decision. Our rules require council members to look internally, and if that's true, they're to disclose conflicts of interest, and they are to abstain from making decisions relating to conflicts of interest. But it all relates to whether there's a financial benefit to the public official.
Thank you, Rolf. All right. Any last questions from anyone who hasn't had an opportunity?
I'll comment, Al. Yes, John and I are partners in a transportation business. We own a building together, but John is not. He works for the bank. He has nothing to do with the financial part of it. He benefits from being working there. I have nothing to do with the bank.
You have a business part.
Al,
Okay.
we're going to let.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've had lots of discussion on this. We've got a resolution on the floor. Roll call, please.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That resolution is approved. We have one more public hearing this evening, and it is for preliminary cost hearing of CP 5959, Stanton Avenue Improvement Projects. I'd like to thank you to those who are here. It's been a lengthy discussion that you sat through, but thank you for your patience. Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, give you a request, you open up the public improvement project. This is for public improvement 5959. This is a 2023 street and utility improvement project. I'm just going to go over a little bit of background data before I'm going to request you open up the project. So like I've noted, Your Honor, this is a reconstruction project of Stanton Avenue from Broadway to Union Avenue. This is a reconstruction project of the sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer as needed, sewer and water services, and full reconstruction of bituminous street. We're going to be replacing the curb and gutter and walks as needed to facilitate the utility construction. Just want to note, prior to this hearing, we also did send out legal publication along with the individual mailed notices that have been sent to all the benefiting properties. Contained with those reports are the individual assessment rates amounts. At this preliminary hearing, we're setting the preliminary interest rate at 7% with an assessment term at 15 years. Per the cost estimates and everything, we're estimating the special assessment rates on a residential 5-ton design at $95.60 per lineal foot. There's also some commercial properties in this zone too as well. Those we're requesting at proposing a rate of $132.48 per lineal foot. I want to note of the individual assessment notices, this is for a portion of the streets, the benefiting properties. Now we move on, we're looking at the cost breakdown. Notice we're looking to have an active street assessment of residential, commercial. The city will have some share, and we'll also have some share in the removals and sanitary services. With all this combined, we're estimating at this time of a total project cost of $2.81 million. Funding, because we're doing Minnesota Statute 429,
There'll be a portion funded through PIR bonds that will be active. It will consist of a city and street. We are, at this time, estimating some municipal state aid street construction. This is a designated state aid route. I want to know this may be subject to change, but we're looking to influx about a $1.1 million into this. We also have the sanitary sewer, water, and storm fund presented before you with a fully funded project of about $2.81 million. So at this time, Your Honor, I'm going to be requesting to open up the public hearing for Public Improvement 5959. And I'm also going to be requesting a resolution ordering the project plans and specifications. So I'll open up to any questions you might have prior to the hearing.
Thank you, Brian. We can open the hearing, then the council can ask any questions after we've heard from those wishing to speak. With that, we will open the hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this project, 5959 Stanton Avenue improvement, please step to the lectern. State your name and address if you would. And thanks again for your patience. I probably should have, in
Darlene
hindsight.
Ryder, 518 West Stanton Avenue, since May 1st, 1976. What's our guarantee that when you do it this time, you're going to do it right and it's not going to need it again 1 year later like it did in 84 and 94? And it still needs to be done? Who is in charge of the cement road, the underlayment and all that? Can't you get it right? Do we not have any good highway construction people around? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Hi, Phyllis.
Hi, Phyllis Scharnberg, 517 West Stanton. I'm on the south side of the road. We embrace this project. It would have been nice to see some diagrams of what the final project will look like, because I've looked at past notes and have seen 3 different outlines, and it sounds like outline A is what has been chosen. Sounds like trees will go down. Many of those trees are rotted, and every time the wind blows, we worry that they're going to come down anyway, so that's not a big issue. It's just the 10-foot sidewalk, and then the project sounds like there's a 5-foot berm that needs to be in place for snow removal or snow, when you clear the roads, where the snow can go. So just the idea of how wide is that, from the curb, how far into our project, into our property does that go? I realize the property comes up into what we maintain right now. And then the other part I have a question with is the north side of the road has an alleyway, so they have access in and out of their property as the project takes place. How does those of us who live on the south side of the road get in and out of our property with our vehicles, or is there something in place for that? Those are questions that I guess come to my mind. So.
Thanks, Phyllis. And after the public hearing, we'll see if our city engineer can answer any of those questions now, and also just give us a timeline as when some of these decisions would be made as well, so the public will be aware of that.
I'm Rochelle Bartels of 529 West Stanton. I have same questions. This letter we got is very confusing. We don't know what we're paying for, what we're getting. It doesn't say anything. And this says street and utility replacement. And then it says one RES-BIT-ST with curb and gutter. Well, does this include sewer and water? What about the walkway? That's what the letter says. What are we paying for? So, yeah, I need to know, what are we paying for? Has a decision been made? Yes, access. I mean, where is that walk gonna go? Are you gonna come into our property or not? And if you are, there are several of us that have driveways that as soon as the sidewalk ends, there's a hill. So if you come into that, we're gonna have to redo our whole driveway, and they're all gonna be much steeper. And one of them, a couple down from me, is pretty darn steep already. So yeah, I've got a lot of questions on this. This is very unclear communication by the city, but asking us to pay a big amount of money for it. And yes, already mentioned, I understand, and, you know, hopefully more information will, you know, make this more clear, that the street below, it is not suitable to being real solid. So there comes the question, is it gonna be, are you gonna do it right? I don't think personally the question is, are you gonna do it right? I think the question is, what can we expect for the life expectancy? My understanding is we can expect those continuous, I call them humpalumps, the highs and lows. We don't have any potholes on my block, but we have a lot of those, and people go around them. So, I mean, what are we gonna get and what can we expect? Because we have what we have. You can only do what you can only do. You know, the best engineers, the workers, construction people in the world cannot fix what Earth is already doing. So that's about all I got to say, which I think is plenty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Others wishing to speak to the Dwayne?
Yes, Dwayne Cookman. Thank you, board, for letting me talk. I live on 543. It's a corner of Stanton and Broadway. Okay. According to this letter, I'm going to get dinged for 62 feet plus 12 and a half feet because I live on the corner. But then you're putting in the sidewalk, and I'm just like, that's benefiting your project. It's taken away from mine. And when if you're putting this 10-foot walkway on the south side, you're going to be within 10 to 15 feet of my front door.
Right. You're gonna take our property.
You have more property or more distance from the current curb to the front doors on the north side of Stanton than you do on the south side. Because there's a couple homes, not only mine, that you're going to be at the front door with that 10-foot walkway, bikeway. And where are you going to put the snow? If you're going to clear the snow from that, where's it going to go? And then you're going to wrap around, because I think you're going to go Broadway to the river. So I'm just like, I get double dinged.
Thank you, Dwayne. And just to clarify, Brian, the double is because the corner lot is at half. Is that what it is? Is the policy half of, or do they, isn't there, we have a policy for the corner lot, correct?
There is, and what let me review his too.
Sure. Thank you, Dwayne.
Cecily Schumacher Cookman, I'm Dwayne's wife, and maybe to clarify, we have a lot and a half, so when you wrap around, there's a lot longer area going south on Broadway. And you're going to decrease our value of our property immensely. We have beautiful maple trees that are just coming into their maturity that you'll murder. You'll ruin our front yard. So is the city going to take up the depreciation and the aesthetics of our home? Our family has lived there since '93. So this was not in any of our dreams at '93 that I know of. So you're infringing on our life, and I do not appreciate it, nor do I agree with it.
Thank you.
Don Ryder, I live on Stanton, and all I gotta say is, I think the year was in '84. They redone that whole street, guaranteed us you'll never have to worry about it again. Well, in 84, they were already digging it up, part of it, busted lines. What's the guarantee this time? Same thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
I remember one more item.
Please, Dwayne.
I grew up in Fergus Falls. I grew up on the other side of the river on Oak Street. But I remember one time they drove in pilings before they put the road down. And you can tell where those pilings are because it doesn't settle. I mean, this last year, how many times have they had to replace the water line breaking? I mean, I think it was 3 times last year that they were doing that. One corner by Stanton and I think Oak Street, and then there was Stanton by Broadway, right in front.
Thank you.
Lots of questions for you. So one of our concerns is we actually have to mark on our calendar to every couple of months, rotor-rooter our line out to the street. And we've measured from where it is in our house, and we're going out halfway into the middle of the road. And so we like the idea that that infrastructure will be taken care of, and we could cross that off of our regular to-do list. The other thing would be is our road gets a lot of big semis that run down the center of that road. So maybe because we see that the infrastructure there isn't super solid, maybe that becomes a road that is limited, and maybe semis have to come in off of, I think it would be Oak instead of running down Broadway where, you know, you got the heavy weight of all those trucks causing a little bit more problem with the road. But right now, one day I just watch to see if there's going to be a car that hits those big potholes and flip because they fly down that street. So it definitely needs fixing, that's for sure. And I appreciate these people speaking. I guess I'm looking in my own front yard and going, well, that marker says my property ends right here, even though I maintain that section of lawn before the sidewalk. Yeah, I don't know how to address those people who feel like their house will lose that much property. Then if we have a 10-foot sidewalk, who maintains that? Most of us are senior citizens. That seems like a lot of pushing of snow, especially when we have a year like this. So are we the ones responsible for the maintaining of a 10-foot sidewalk, or does that become like part of the trails and the city clears that off? So.
Sure. Thanks, Phyllis.
Rochelle Bartels again. I agree with Phyllis on all of her points. Where are we going to put that snow? Why would we have to do a 10-foot?
Speaking of the mic.
Okay, why would we have to do 10 feet? I mean, yeah, and are you going to use the existing lines where the road is now? I mean, how far from the right-of-way on the north to the right-of-way on the south, can we kind of adjust to that to make it easier and more beneficial to everyone? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think our engineers will certainly take all of the public comments tonight at this preliminary cost hearing and come back.
Some of my comments earlier about, you know, the road and what's underneath, when the guys have been working on the road, you kind of walk by to go to the grocery store and you're just saying hi, and they're just kind of making comments, and they say there's a river underneath here. So that's why it keeps giving away. So that's why I say you can only do what you can only do. You know, if you're going to fix it, how long is it going to last? I mean, why would we have to pay this much money, and then what do we get for how long? I mean, it's just not like some other real solid parts. So that's one of my big concerns.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else before we close the public hearing? All right, thank you all for your public comment this evening. Thanks for being patient again. We're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Brian, would you just give us a little a little rundown of the time frame of the process? This is a preliminary, or this is a public hearing for the preliminary cost hearing. Yeah, I'm just asking Brian if you would give us a time frame or a timeline, if you will, of this project, and what we'll do with the information tonight that we've gathered.
Yeah, certainly, Your Honor. Yeah. We're requesting resolution ordering the project plans and specifications. Based on past reconstruction projects is what I, just in a brief synopsis of it. We're going to be ordering project plan specifications. We will take these comments and everything. We'll also respond to them as well. I completely understand some of the comments that have been received in that. And there is a lot of things we can do with the project. Perhaps I'll be bringing back to the council some of the comments based on so we can continue the final design. Once we do the final design, I'll coming back, update the cost estimates, and requesting authorization to advertise for plans. Once we take get bids, probably be a 21-day bid, 21-day bid publication time. We'll get those numbers. Once we get prices, we'll amend the final assessment rules, and then we'll set out notices once again for the final cost hearing, and then we'll look to award the construction contract. Based on recent past year 5 schedules of how we've done the final cost hearing prior to awarding the construction services contract. That being said, it does add time to the overall project completion. Knowing this, I would envision we go through all this process. We would have this project, I'd like to have a construction contract this summer, but I would anticipate, given procurement time, materials, labor force industries, that we would have full construction or partial construction this late summer with the ability for the contractor to finish the construction the following year and then do the final wearing bituminous, which is standard in our specifications, and the subsequent year as well. We need to do this because number one, the timing of the season. I think it's also we got to look at too with the contractors, local resources, that we got to look to get our best price too for all these projects. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brian. So I'm thinking through this. So the resolution tonight is to order plans and specifications. The public is going to have another opportunity you'll respond to the questions tonight, but you'll also bring that back to the council. There'll be another engagement with the public before a final cost hearing. That's correct, right?
I believe it's very prudent. The two big things I can hit if I just speak to, yes, I do understand, but I don't, the underlying soil conditions. This project back in about the mid-'80s, I believe what one individual was referring to, there is an interceptor line there. We got two projects. We have an interceptor, which is a sanitary sewer that is constructed on top of pilings. That's a very deep sewer. We're not looking to replace that. We televised it. It's in very good condition. What we are looking to replace is the sanitary sewer water main that serves these properties. It's much shallower. But the road as well. We did attempt to get 6 soil borings in the area. Everybody that knows the area, there is some very unsuitable materials. We've had a lot of issues with that. So I think as engineers, we're going to be looking to implement some geotextile fabrics along with some edge drains, control water tables, and within suitable soils to make a 10-ton condition. It'll be a larger section, but we're anticipating that we're going to probably be excavating all this material out and bringing back all new roadbed material.
Thank you, Brian. So we're looking for a resolution to order the preliminary plans and specs for this project.
I'll offer, I got a question.
Thank you, Scott. Would you like to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Anthony. Yes, please go ahead, Scott.
I just want to know where the 10-foot sidewalks came from in this. I'd never seen nothing about that in the project, and I hear it from these people here, and I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
The pathway.
Brian, please.
Yes, Your Honor, Councilman Rachels. Yes, a 10-foot sidewalk, and it's still up to question if we're going to do an 8 or 10. That's for the central, our regional trail system.
Glacial Edge Trail.
Glacial Edge Trail, thank you.
So it's a bike trail then, okay.
Correct. It's the extension of it per on the master plan from the downtown riverfront phase 1 moving westwardly to the former dairy site.
That's all I need. I just wanted this. That's all I need. Thank you.
Anything else from the council? We have a resolution on the floor. Roll call, please.
Roper.
You'll be
Go.
back. He stepped out.
Kramer.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
Roof absent.
That resolution is approved. Thank you, Brian. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
And the city will be in touch with the next steps on this project. Under awarding of bids, tonight we have a resolution to award the bid for the construction services contract for Public Improvement 5314, the Union and Lincoln Street Improvement Project to Mark Sand and Gravel in the amount of $1,950,424.01, contingent upon receiving all remaining state approvals. Again, Brian DeVaro, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, just recently we received two bids were received and publicly read aloud on March 29th. The apparent low bidder for this project is Mark Sand and Gravel. They submitted lowest bid amount of $1,950,424.01. The estimated updated probable construction cost was about $1.6 million. More Engineering, along with myself, we've evaluated the bids. To date, I just want to note, MnDOT still needs to provide grant clearance from Office of Civil Rights and some other documents. But therefore, I'm going to be requesting this be contingent award. But I have to bring this to the council at this time because of bid retention timeframes that we must adhere to. But if acceptable, and I get the additional clearances from MnDOT, I'll be arranging for the pre-construction meeting for this project to get the contractor schedules and how they plan to achieve completion of this project. Once I hear this information, I will be disseminating it out to the public as far as logistics and representatives associated with this project. Budgetary impact, with the federal aid share to fund the total estimated project cost is $2,438.24. We have federal aid money of $816,000. I'm going to be requesting to use our municipal state aid construction in an amount of $1,560,423. And then we also have a small allocation from our unallocated municipal state aid in an amount of $61,600. Therefore, as presented before you, we believe this is a fully funded project. So at this time, I also want to note too that yes, per the contract, we're looking to do construction starting this summer with completion substantial this fall. So at this time, Your Honor, I'm requesting resolution of the construction services contract to Mark Sand and Gravel in amount of $1,950,424.00, and this is contingent on receiving all remaining state aid approvals.
Thank you, Brian. It's back to the council. We can accomplish this through a resolution.
I'll lay that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Brent. Questions for Brian? Roll call, please.
Roper.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Kwame.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Brian. Under petitions and communications, tonight we have a proclamation declaring April 28th as Arbor Day, and I'll read that proclamation briefly. Whereas climate change is a complex problem that impacts all Minnesotans and our ability to thrive, and whereas the health and longevity of Minnesota's trees are being affected by changing temperatures and precipitation, more extreme weather events, and increasing pressure from pests, diseases, and invasive species, and whereas Minnesota is at risk to lose over 1 billion ash trees due to emerald ash borer, which would impact carbon storage, habitat, water movement, and water quality. And whereas trees capture carbon from the atmosphere and store it in their trunks, roots, and the surrounding soil, thereby offsetting greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas a healthy tree canopy decreases temperatures along streets, providing cooler spaces in the summertime. And whereas trees reduce stormwater runoff and act as a filter, preventing sediments and pollutants from washing into waterways. And whereas Minnesotans can help build resilient communities and reduce the negative impacts of climate change by planting and caring for trees, one tree at a time. Now therefore I, Ben Shire, the mayor of the city of Fergus Falls, Minnesota, do by proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the city of Fergus Falls and the month of May 2023 as Arbor Month. Thank you, Guy, to your entire staff for the work you do on the trees. Just reminder to everyone, I believe we were Minnesota, Fergus Falls was the first Tree City USA in the state of Minnesota and the longest serving, longest continuous running Tree City in the country. So it's definitely something that we're proud of, and thank you to you and your department for the work on that, Guy.
That's cool.
My computer is also getting tired, I'm sorry.
It's overheating.
It's deleting.
All right. Moving along to the consent agenda. It's getting larger by the second. We have 13 items. There's a request to remove one of them for discussion, leaving 12 remaining items, if anyone would like. So, as a reminder, item 6 was the one that we were taking off for discussion. If anyone would like to discuss any of the other items individually, seeing none, we can approve the remainder of the consent agenda through resolution.
I'll offer that.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Roll call, please.
Roofer.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
That resolution is approved. Item number 6 is a motion directing the city attorney to amend City Code 90.24B, substatute 3, regarding the time of allowed construction activities. I don't know. Is it Anthony?
Yeah, it was myself, Your Honor. I just wanted to know what, obviously this is what sort of is the timeline on this? Obviously we got a draft, there'll be a draft and then it'll come back to council and then does it, how long a process is this going to take to get from A to B?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. Thanks. And
Yeah.
Andrew, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Hicks. City Attorney Nickelmo can draft this after the action this evening. We can have it at the next council meeting for the first reading. We could have it at the following council meeting for the second reading. And then it's then published in the newspaper and it become effective 15 days after publication.
Right, thank you. So 45 days.
Yes. Yep. Maybe add 1 or 2 for
Yeah.
journal.
The
but-
date,
Yep.
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 Thank you.
Like,
I'll make the motion to
thank you, Anthony.
direct
Second-
city staff.
Second, Brent, any other questions? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Under ordinance and resolutions, we have 2 items for consideration this evening. The first is a second reading of ordinance 36, 8th series, dealing with the vacation of drainage and utility easement as requested by Vector Windows. We've discussed this at committee. It's had a first reading. If anyone has any questions, we'll direct them to city staff. Otherwise, roll call, please.
Roofer.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Joel.
Yes.
Fleming.
Yes.
That ordinance is approved. Item number 2 is a resolution approving the creation of a maintenance operations supervisor position at the community arena. We discussed that Wednesday, but we'll call on Mike Cartwell just to give us a brief overview before we
Good evening.
have a discussion.
Thank you for
Good evening,
having
Mike.
me. Are there any questions based on the discussion we had last week at the Committee of the Whole? I'd be more than happy to answer them for you related to this position.
Please, Anthony.
I think before approving this, I would like to kind of understand what it's going to cost to create ice in the summer. I think, obviously, even though we live in Minnesota and it's cold for kind of like 9 months of the year, there are kind of 3 months when it's warm. And the amount of energy that it takes to chill from, an ambient temperature of 80, 90 degrees down to kind of 32 minus, takes a lot. And I'm concerned whether we've really got a grasp on what it's going to cost us to create ice in the middle of summer in Fergus Falls when it's 90 degrees outside. And I think before approving a person to do this, we should understand that, because I think we're going to add costs to something that we don't know what the true cost of it's going to be. And at the committee of whole, we even sort of had, we didn't know exactly how the breakout was going to be as to who, what the split was going to be. And I think we're doing an injustice to hire somebody without fully understanding what the role, what the cost share will be.
I would like to call upon my colleague Glenn Taylor to maybe address that.
On.
If you have any further information on how the ice is managed during the summer, so forth.
Sure. Yeah, we have one summer of history on the cost of maintaining the ice through last summer with the temporary chiller. We don't really know what it's going to cost to continue to maintain ice with the chiller that we recently purchased from the school district for close to $500,000. But once we get through this season, we'll have a better handle on what those costs will be. But we have made that $500,000 commitment in the purchase, so we feel that this person that's being proposed, this position, is necessary to maintain that system so that we can provide the facility and use that equipment, for that $500,000 investment.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
I just comment, the position is just, it's for the whole year to operate that building. And he needs to learn, he or she needs to learn the compressors and stuff, but there's so much maintenance to be done up at that building that we fully acquired now. We're 100% ownership, I guess, in it. We were before, but not as much as we are now. And we need somebody up there to start doing it. We have a private citizen doing it now, taking care of the chillers, but that job needs to get in place. And I understand Ranthie's come from, I've asked the question before too, and I don't think we'll know until the end of the year. So that's just, but we do need him. Sorry, him or her.
Let's go ahead and get a resolution. I should have done that earlier.
I'll offer the resolution.
I'll second it.
Okay, now, Jim, go ahead.
One of the things is that when we have ice during the summer, that's going to be used to rent out, and the cost of the rent will be reflected in what our costs are to keep the ice during the summer also.
Yeah, that much I understand, but I don't know whether we know what the cost is. That's my point is that I don't know whether we know what the cost is. So how are we going to recoup, the money? It's creating ice in the summer is not very carbon neutral.
Right. We do not know what the costs are of running this because we haven't run this system. So we're very clear on that. We do not know those costs. What we have been doing is whatever cost it is that we've been running, we charge that to the user groups. So that's what I was talking about Wednesday, where we reconcile that during the summer, make sure that's we're made whole on that so that those user groups, they pay the cost of operating that. And that's where it got so muddy with, because you have the school as a member of the user groups, and we can't, put cost on them for what summer ice is. But there will be some cost adjustments for what happens during the year. Again, we're just getting that experience now of that new chiller. So it's unfortunate we don't have a year under our belt, but we have this chiller. Well, we have to do it right. We got to take care of it too and operate it correctly. So it's a pinch point.
Thanks, Bill.
Mine's kind of echoes Jim. Jim got to it before I did. Do we know with the additional months, what's the average of what we think we might be able to recoup in additional revenue?
We don't really know. We just are going by people that have said that there's a real demand for ice time in this area of the state. So we think we're going to be able to sell a lot of ice time. So hoping to recoup, a lot of that ice production time and maintenance time.
Yes, Al.
Is the person that's being looked at, is that person already an employee of the city, or is it a brand-new position that's coming from outside, or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, currently this would be a brand-new position. If it's approved by the council, then it would be put out for internal and external consideration.
Has there been anybody that's in the city system that would know how to do this? And why is the maintenance so bad on that building? I mean, how did it get so far behind?
Is the maintenance really bad? I have to ask that question.
I mean, I hear that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some things that need to be brought up to speed, I guess you could say, but it's not in bad condition, no.
No.
No. Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, when I use the word it needs maintenance, I mean, it needs to be addressed. Paintings needs to be, I mean, cleaning, it's just things that need to be looked at and make sure they're all in working order, because the school did it before, and I think they did a good job before, but we just need to get somebody trained in doing this and getting it in place so we can just do a lot of preventive stuff with it. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say it's bad, it's not junk by any means.
No, and it's,
There's just different places in the building that just need more attention than others.
it's 12 years old at this point,
Exactly.
so. it- Yeah.
Also point out, weren't the compressors conditioned before we purchased them now?
Yeah, the school district did rebuild the compressors prior to us purchasing them, so there was an assessment done by Commercial Refrigeration out of Virginia, Minnesota, and they said that the system is now a 50-year life system, so we've got a good system, and we need a person hired to just maintain the system and
operate it.
Maintain and operate. And so with that, needing a person to do that, we felt it was necessary to include the rest of the maintenance of the building included in this job description, so that some of those things that have been fallen by the wayside will get attention. Because we just haven't had a full-time supervisor there to manage the operations.
Thank you, Guy.
One follow-up question.
Yeah, please.
Obviously, this person needs to be pretty much, skilled in HVAC systems. Do you need a Minnesota license for that? Is it, is there a benefit in that over, employing? Because if we employ this person and then we have to have a third party come in and do work on the system, then we should look for the right person that has that license to do that work.
That's a good question, Anthony. No license required, but it is a safety-sensitive position because we're dealing with a refrigerant that is a hazardous material, so they would go through quite a bit of training, and that person would have to be technically qualified to work on compressors. So we would make sure that during the interview process and through credentialing that person would meet those requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Anthony. Anyone else have any other? Yes, please, Scott.
Short comment just to reflect on one of the priorities that was brought up at our retreat on Thursday morning was the condition of the assets of the city and our commitment to maintaining and needing to maintain those assets of the city. We've got an asset of the city here that people are pretty proud of, that we've invested heavily in, and that I believe that we need to do what we need to do to maintain it and keep it good. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
Thanks, Scott. So we have a resolution and a second approving the creation of the maintenance operator supervisor position. Any last comments?
I think, what is the amount, what's the salary amount for you looking at something like that? I'd like to talk about money.
Sure. It's actually a three-way cost share, as Bill has mentioned in the past. Our actual cost is yet to be determined. It's somewhere under $20,000 as far as the cost to the city. This position will be sent out and be rated, but we believe ballpark it's in a B31 or B32 category, which is about $55,000 to $60,000 position.
And would the city be providing the benefits too for this
Yes.
individual?
Yes,
Okay,
it'd be a
so
full-time
we'd be
position.
20,000 plus benefits.
I would say that
No,
this position would,
No, those benefits are split amongst the formula.
So it's not the city going to pay the whole benefit package?
The city provides it, the cost is split amongst the allocation like we talked about.
three-way, yep.
All right, thank you, Mike. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 A resolution is approved. Under presentation of claims, tonight we have claims in the amount of $1,504,984.56. And if anyone has any questions, we'll direct them to our finance director.
I have a question.
Please.
And we did decrease that amount from what was in the packet.
About
just so you're
$10,000.
aware of that.
I'll offer the resolution to pay the bills.
Resolution to pay the bills, second by Scott. Thank you, Scott. Please, Anthony, go ahead.
I'm just curious, with the Fergus Falls Visitor Bureau convention moving out of the building, are we still going to be doing their accounting?
Yes.
Right.
We are.
Any other questions for Bill? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 The resolution is approved. Under Board Committee and Department reports, we have a discussion pertaining to the approving of the naming rights policy for the use of the Phase 2 fundraising committee, and we'll call on our Community Development Manager, Clara Beck. Good evening once again, Clara.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. A community group was formed in order to assist the city in fundraising for the Phase 2 of our downtown project, to help support the finances for that project. Part of their strategy is to provide naming rights for certain aspects of the project. And a good practice would be to have a policy in place that can help guide their work, and that also gives them the ability to offer those naming rights without coming to council with every single donation that's coming in. So you have a policy that is based on the policy that the library used during their fundraising efforts. So very similar to that, that's in your packet. Let me know if you have any questions, but I think it's fairly straightforward.
Thank you, Clara. We can accomplish this through a resolution, if someone would like to offer that.
I'll offer the resolution, and I got a question as well.
Thanks, Anthony. Second, Tom, thank you. Please, Anthony, go ahead.
The only one kind of comment I had is that basically, while the Phase 2 fundraising committee is grateful for and encourages donations for all individuals, businesses, and organizations, the committee has the right to decline any gift to the project and/or to reject naming proposals. And I think, as much as I appreciate that, I think I would like to know. I think as a council, we should know why they are rejecting it. You know, if somebody comes along and wants to make, you know, an X $1,000, I don't think it's. I think I'd like to know why we're going to reject the money.
Sure. I think that's reasonable. We can certainly amend the guideline to include that.
Yeah.
Just a simple report back to the council with any proposed rejected offer and the reason for it. That's fair. Good enough, fair enough with everyone? Okay, we can make that amendment. Okay to amend who made that resolution?
I made it. Yeah, that's
You
fine.
right to amend it?
Yep.
All right. Tom, you could? Okay. Other questions for Clara or the fundraising committee? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 That resolution is approved. Under reports from staff and administrative officers, we'll have a review of the April 13th council staff retreat, and we'll call on our city administrator, Andrew Bremseth.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Council members, I'll just start by saying that if somebody gets the chance, they should review the minutes from the retreat. I think that'll be pretty telling as to what the topics of discussion were, and I'm not going to completely recap that this evening. There will be a number of items that are coming back to the city council for consideration and for discussion, but for the public's sake, last Thursday, staff, department head staff, and city council members met at the Bigwood Event Center for a council and staff retreat. The focus of the retreat was to cover some high-level policies, process, roles, responsibilities of council and staff, communications, ethics, and the potential for a code of conduct for elected officials. We spent about 3 hours discussing those topics. I really appreciate the participation and the discussion. A lot of good things came out of those conversations, and I think a lot of people feel really good about where we're at as a team. After that, we spent a considerable amount of time on a kind of a fun exercise pertaining to prioritization of city priorities and projects. And leading up to the retreat, we did multiple iterations of having department heads and council members provide some of their priorities for the city. After we gave everybody the ability to dream and have an open-ended question, we had everybody vote on their highest priorities and assign point values to those votes to determine which projects should get further dialogue and consideration at our staff retreat. To make a long story short, we kind of whittled it down to 4 main priorities or 4 major topics that you'll certainly hear a lot about in the coming months and years for this council. Number 1, of course, being streets and infrastructure. That includes providing public education on upcoming projects. We had a lot of discussion about that tonight. Road conditions and finding additional funding sources for street improvements, including franchise fees. Another top priority was also mentioned this evening by Councilmember Kwame, was the focus on maintaining and taking care of our current assets before we start new projects. And with that, understanding the city's financial position and commitments that have taken place over the last several years to know exactly where we stand. Another top priority of the city council is financial planning for capital improvements and equipment replacement purchases. We see things continue to go up in price, and we need to be looking forward and putting out a plan that identifies how we're going to fund these equipment replacements. And then finally, planning for technology and software system updates for the city. There's a lot of areas in which we can improve related to our software and technology. That would be an improvement to the community's interaction with the city. We have an aging system. We've done a good job of keeping up with that, but with the retirement of our longtime IT director and people coming out of school not being trained in this particular area on the system we run, it's essential that we start moving in that direction. I will just end here. There's a handful of projects that we talked about. There's a handful of topics you're going to see at our committee of the whole meeting next week, including discussions related to the open forum and other things such as that. So a lot of good things came out of the retreat. It was scheduled to end at 1 o'clock last Thursday, and we ended up going till 2:30 because we had great participation, great dialogue, and hopefully a lot of fun with the activities that we had planned. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions, Your Honor.
Thanks. Thank you, Andrew. With that, again, we'll ask people to go to the minutes. Yeah.
My comment would be, I did send a note to Andrew, but I think, I wanted to thank staff for, putting it together. I think there was a lot of thought went into it, and I think, for those council members that attended, it was actually a good meeting. So, thank you.
No, thank you for that, Anthony. I would agree, and I'm always amazed at how productive it can be to get people.
We now have a very own BOAC girl.
That's right. So thanks, Anthony, for that. And I echo thank you, staff. Lynn, I know puts a lot of work into it. Clara, Jean, you guys helped out, but Lynn, thank you. And you too.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, with that, there's no old or unfinished business. There's no new business to come before the council. If there's any announcements, we're going to adjourn for a closed meeting for discussion of threatened litigation pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.05 subsection 3B. We will not be reconvening this evening, so we're adjourned.